This episode is brought to you by Roxanne Barton Conlin, attorney and feminist activist.
Hello, folks. Welcome to On the Calls, Season 2, the last for the season. Produced by the stars among us, I'm Ozzy, and I appreciate you for tuning in to this thank you tour, which offers a thank you card to a person in my life who has impacted me, Sean Michael Field. How are you, Sean?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I am doing hunky-dory. I'm glad that you found some time to offer me, being the very busy person that you are, especially to close this second season.
You're welcome. Thank you.
So, Sean, we met right around 9/11.
Yes.
At that time, I was in the fashion industry, and I was doing a fashion show to help the fire departments, etc., for 9/11. Do you remember that time?
Yeah, it was. I remember when we first met. That was in Barbados. I came down to be a judge for the contest that was happening there to choose a model. And then I ended up coming up to New York, and we ended up doing the show. And it was right around, the 1 year anniversary of 9/11. Very interesting time.
It's funny. I even forgot about that fashion show. But I do remember the fun times I had down there.
Yeah. Soon after I went back to Barbados, you had wanted to do a magazine for the fashion, and I did the small size magazine from what I remember, and I was getting ready to go on my own in doing some design work and stuff, or I was doing my own stuff and getting ready to collaborate in a bigger company. So it was kind of like perfect timing to come together and work on that.
What I remembered about you was that you were able to actually bring my thoughts and ideas to life in a way that I had not experienced before. You work with a lot of people and you speak with them, and they could be right in front of you, and you can explain things back and forth. And what you try to realize does not happen. You and I were conversing over the phone. Yeah. And you were able to make this thing happen to the point where I still have that copy of that magazine. Ended up being a very tiny magazine, but it was flawless what you were able to do. And you were able to do it in such a quick time that it astounded me. Let me know that you have a mind that is just one that I want to have around me, and one that I think the world will be able to experience for its openness and precision and its creativity and its attention to time. I mean, so many things that happened in that time with an overseas call. I was always looking to see what your future would be. Right. And now you're an award-winning filmmaker, producer, writer, entrepreneur, cinematographer, director. Through you, my trailer, with the help of Philip Coccioletta, who I had on last week,
hey, Phil,
became a reality. And not in the 2 weeks initially that we had thought, but in two or 2.5 days, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was because, again, of you, because Philip had the foresight to say, okay, we're going to do it. And I'm going to be in charge of this, and you're going to be in charge of that. But then the person to pull it together was you. Again, there you are. But you pulled it together so precisely. And that was back in 2012? It was 9/11.
Yeah.
And so, you're talking approximately 10 years later.
Yeah.
Then I might.
You went to college, etc.
Yeah.
What was that thing that got you into the graphics and then doing something on your own? Why wasn't it a 9-to-5 thing for you? You know?
So I think it has everything to do with how I grew up in Barbados. My dad has 6 brothers and 1 sister, and they're all born a year apart. And growing up, I don't remember any of them working for someone, with maybe the exception of Uncle John, who was an accountant. You know, my dad had his own company. My uncle, he worked for the newspaper, but he started the newspaper, so it was, you know, part and parcel of, you know, his own company. You know, my other uncle, he taught tennis. My other uncle made and manufactured garments. You know, my aunt did her own business. So every one of my family members, and going back to my grandfather, he had his own business. We were, you know, everyone worked for themselves. And they're a very creative, artistic family. So again, growing up, you know, we were at each other's house every day, because when you have 7 brothers, you know, you're all a year apart, you know, and then you all have kids. There's 14 offspring, 3 of them born in the same year. You spend a lot of time together, and you spend a lot of time singing and making music and just being extremely creative, and that, you know, propelled me throughout school. And then, you know, they didn't get the opportunity to finish their education because my grandfather died when they were all young, relatively young. So they had to go to work, you know, some of them before they were, you know, 11 years old, and they couldn't finish school. So they were all self-taught. So one of the biggest things was to go to school. So I was the first in the family to go to university and get a degree. But I also just grew up a nerd. So, you know, I think it's the drive from the way that I was raised back home in Barbados that really set the tone for a lot of this.
So you got into graphics, and what was the next step right after?
Right after I graduated with my degree in graphic design, I went to work for Southwestern Bell, and I was a computer programmer. I did COBOL, which came to light during the pandemic here. They needed COBOL programmers because a lot of the mainframe software was COBOL still for a lot of the paying systems. So a lot of COBOL programmers ended up being a necessity during the pandemic.
Wow.
But I did that, and then I jumped into corporate internet security, and then I moved back to Barbados and started to do work on my own again in design.
And that's graphic design.
Yeah. And so then I left that, moving to LA to pursue my true passion, which is film.
What was the catalyst to get you from the behind the computer to in front of the camera?
I always loved acting. I had been in theater when I was young. I was in my first TV commercial when I was 5 for KFC with my dad in Barbados. And it's just always been something that I love to do. I do a lot of character voices and these types of things. Again, coming from that family, you do a lot of that. Eventually, I got to a point where I realized that being a graphic artist was not going to get me to the places that I wanted to get to in life.
So at that time, what were your dreams?
Make films. You know, really explore the creative element that is in a film, where you get the avenue to express vocally, verbally, visually, you know, cinematic. Like, there's so many different ways of expression in a film. So you get to say a lot in that platform, and I think it has a certain type of life. And, you know, essentially you go in with your eyes wide open, but then you have to learn the business of it. And then once you learn the business of it, then you start to understand the difficulty in getting some of that creativeness out there. So again, I took the self path and I started to create my own film, which have proved to be beneficial in certain lights. But, you know, I would certainly love a studio film as well, and some studio backing for one of the 19 ideas that I have written out, ready to kind of almost roll.
You had begun to do some things in Barbados or with MTV and whatnot. So talk to me about that a little bit, that life.
Yeah. So while still doing the graphic design stuff, MTV decided to start a Caribbean channel. And I saw the article in the newspaper, and I, you know, saw a friend's name in it, and I contacted her and I said, "You've got to get me on there. You know, this is my path." And you know, 10 months later, they were in Barbados, you know, and they were, Rihanna was going to perform, you know, for the first time. And you know, it wasn't like the big Rihanna that she is now. It was, you know, her first album, her first song. It wasn't as huge. So we were at the plantation. It was a small thing, and I saw the human resource person and the owner, and I was upset that they hadn't hired me. And you know, I gave them some chat, and they didn't. You know, it didn't happen. But we ended up hitting it off, and almost 10 months later, I get the call from them. Hey, are you in Barbados? Yeah, we'd like you to host these 2 TV shows for us during Crop Over. And it took off from there. I was like, oh, sure, yeah, let's go.
What was the show
so
about?
They remembered me. It was 2 shows that they already had on. Yeah, so one was about, you know, a live element of partying during Carnival. So we went to different events and, you know, explored a little bit of the island, did a little bit of surfing, you know, just showed like the animal flower forest, a little bit of the beauty island, a little bit of nightlife, what, you know, you could do while at Carnival. You know, it's not just all partying. You can do some partying and other stuff. That was one of the shows. And then the other show was a real deep dive into Crop Over, attending the parties, speaking to the people in government, speaking to the revelers, you know, all of that. So 2 shows.
Explain Crop Over.
Crop Over is our carnival in Barbados. It happens on the first Monday in August, which is to symbolize the end of the crop season for sugarcane. So then the cane is cut, and then you end up with an eventual, you know, person who was crowned the king and queen of Carnival. But it goes back to slavery days when the slaves were cutting the cane, and they asked the slave master for a day off. And he gave them that opportunity because they had cut so much cane, and so that became what's known as Kuduman Day. And so that's our carnival, and it's called Crop Over.
Did you just do this for the island of Barbados, or did you include other islands?
When I was first at Temple, I just hosted for Barbados.
Right.
And then I moved to LA and started doing that stuff. And then a couple of years later, I ended up having the opportunity to do a travel show. And we created this travel show, which then ended up back on Temple. And then also on One Caribbean TV here in the US. And it went from there. We did 3 seasons, 36 episodes, and traveled all over doing content for that. But that I was director, cinematographer. That was, you know, behind the camera, not in front of the camera.
That must have been some fun.
Yeah, it was. Got to see a lot of places, meet a lot of people. Some places I'd love to go back. You know, you meet people, you make great relationships with them, you stay in touch, but you don't have a chance to maybe go back to. And so you haven't seen each other, and now all of a sudden life happens, and it's been 5-6 years, and they have a kid, and you know, like, but you still stay in touch, and you just hope that you can make it back there.
What was that network that you founded or created in the Caribbean?
Yeah, it was called Nexus Networks, because Nex is us. So that was our slogan, and it was a lifestyle Caribbean TV network that we launched in Cayman Islands. There was an RFP put out in the region for persons to launch a TV lifestyle network with an incumbent telecom. And fortunately for us, our business plan won. And we had the opportunity to launch a television network where we created 37.5 hours of original content for the region. That was a great opportunity to showcase a lot of skill sets. I took on the role of chief operating officer and ran the company. And done a lot of work liaising with a lot of persons throughout multiple countries to be able to acquire content, as well as create original content, to travel, to create, to take people off the streets and turn them into TV show hosts and editors and camera operators. And, you know, we produced a concert,
But what you also did, you created a lot of jobs for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I spent personally 6 years training. I have a top 6 students, one who's at NYU graduating next year. The second one is one of the top students at Toronto Film School. You know, front page of the paper with the mayor of Toronto. Wow. He's really good. And he was one that I had to have like some disciplinary kind of conversations with to make him understand how serious his talent was, but how much of a waste it would be if he kept, you know, going down the road he was going. And he made the right decision to go to Toronto and to go to film school and to be near his son, which was perfect. So there's him. There's another one in Toronto. He is an incredible cinematographer and director. He does a lot of music videos, primarily throughout the Caribbean. So he's done videos for Kess and Shensia and a lot of big artists in the region. Then you have Chela. She was a TV show host. She was asking us, what can she do? What can she do? And we realized she had the gift for gab. Made her do some work. And if you look at her at the beginning and you look at her now on TV, it's a stark difference. But it's great to see where people started from and recognizing that talent within them, and just trying to pull it out and give back, and spark something that can help our region step it up.
It makes me smile to see how far you have come. Now, that being said, you acted in films such as Hancock with Will Smith and Charlize Theron. You've done commercials, Amco, and when you look back at your life at that point, before you moved into forming your own film company and whatnot, how did you feel at that point?
At that point, I had this desire to do more than what I was capable of showcasing in LA at the time. I think what tends to happen is, the old saying, 100,000 people move there every year. After 2 years is 10. After 4 years is 100. There's 1,000. After 5 years is 100, and then there's you. So if you stick it out long enough in LA, you will find an avenue to some sort of level of success. But I always would question, what is that level of success? Because I would see people there who've reached certain levels, and then there's just this is all we're going to get to, so you kind of plateau there. And I have this dogged determination that that's not going to, it's not going to be where I end. I have so much to offer, so I have to make sure that I don't just sit around and keep waiting for the offerings. I have to create a pathway to get those offerings out there. I have to let people see, and you mentioned something about how my mind works, and it's one of those things where I feel like there's something that I have to offer. So, and it's not just one thing.
What were you doing prior to 2020? Where were you up till 2020 and COVID?
So the last 2 years have been very, now I look at every year as being very, 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 very strategically targeted and specific, but the last 2 years, I had to deal with healing. My clavicle popped out of my shoulder in 2017, 4 days after that concert, just from wear and tear of months of nonstop work. And I didn't have surgery until December 2018, 2 years ago, December 5th, 2 years and a day to the date. So I had the surgery to fix my shoulder, and I knew that 2019 was going to be an entire year of just healing. And I knew that, from 2017 onwards was going to be the same, and I had to prepare myself for the healing, which means I had to spend a lot of money, which means I'd be, down money, and then I'd have to figure out a way to come back up. So I knew it was going to be a tough 2 years of physical discomfort and pain and work and an uphill battle. And I knew it was also going to be a financial uphill battle. But I stayed locked into being just determined. Again, that same determination to succeed. By at all costs, not by any means necessary, but at all costs. So I think there's a great difference between the two. A lot of people don't know the difference between by any means necessary and at all costs. By any means necessary is, you may be willing to do something that stands against who you are just for success. Versus at all costs, meaning that you're willing to give each and every single last ounce of what you have and faith and belief that you will succeed, and that's at all costs to yourself. You'll be willing to go without food, you'll be willing to go without sleep, you make the sacrifices because you know what you have within you. And there's a big difference between those two, and I think that needs to be stated in this day and age, especially because you have a lot of people who want to succeed. They don't know what it looks like, so they end up finding themselves in places and they hear things that people say and they think that's the way. And I see, unfortunately, you know, look at a lot of these young rappers that are out here getting killed for what? You know, like, it's starting to seem as though killing them is getting a reputation is better than actually having a career, which just sounds as dumb as it feels like what I'm seeing happening. You know, these guys can't even get out the gates and they're being killed by other young black men. Over what? Like, haven't we got enough issues and problems and worries that we're still doing this? We were doing this when I was a teenager, you know, so it's not by any means necessary. It has to be different.
Beautiful. Now, COVID comes along and we have a conversation. It doesn't stop you. You find a way to make things happen. Talk to me or talk to the audience about your COVID journey, because I'm so proud of what you've been able to do. Even though at times I've been like, oh my God, please be safe, please be safe. Please be safe.
So, you know, I'm one of these people. I just said it in a chat earlier today. You know, I was masked up before anybody else. You know, I had a mask since January. I traveled February 4th, and I traveled with my mask. I was in Trinidad Carnival for a month. Every event I attended, I had on a mask. I was the only person there with a mask on. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. And a month later, you know, we're in lockdown, and we know the rest. So I was also saying to myself that I did not want to have the same year that I had financially. I did not want to have the same year that I had from a working perspective. I wanted to really showcase certain things, and I was grateful for the lockdown. I was really grateful for the pause, the opportunity to stop and to take stock of what it is that I really was trying to do, and also being grateful that it took away the pathway to the easy access to the things that I knew were available, because I didn't want those things. But it was an opportunity to make a couple of dollars here and pay the bills. Okay, great. And it's still doing work, and it's, you know, but it's just not the work that I want to do. I want to do something else. And so I took it upon myself that when the city went silent, dark, empty, from the very first day, I went out and I started taking photos. And then, you know, I graduated those photos into videos. And that was happening for a while until the protests began. And then when the protest began, I started shooting the protest from a photography standpoint. But in the middle of the lockdown, I was also like, you know, I got stories to tell. So I called up 10 friends and said, what are you guys doing? You want to get together and make a movie? And they said, yeah. And so I wrote a script, and we didn't really produce it like I would produce a movie normally. I left it very open-ended because there was multiple people who shot. There was multiple people who did different things. So I kind of wanted to give everybody an opportunity to just, you know, have space to touch in all different realms, which may not have been the best idea in the end, because we still need somebody to guide the ship. And I tried my best still to do that, and we ended up with a film. We ended up with a short called Level that we make about a delivery guy. I tell people that it is it's Hitchcock meets Einstein meets Escher meets My Mind.
Wow.
So it's an interesting journey about this delivery guy. So take it for what it is.
Is it streaming somewhere? What's happening there?
Yes, it's on YouTube. You can look up Level, Level, Level MSH Productions. You'll find it.
Okay.
I had an opportunity to shoot a couple of music videos for this guy Fabio Foreign, who's a big hip hop artist out right now. Famous Dex. Got to work with Mills Miller, director, who brought me into his team to start being his cinematographer, his go-to. So we shot a bunch of music videos. Chinese Kitty, Black Poppy. Did a documentary on Famous Dex. Then I got the phone call from a friend of mine, Fred Rocks, who I had done some Red Bull work with 10 years ago, and we've done a lot of other things. Last year we did Tony Robbins together, and like we've done a lot of little cool projects, Diamonds International, a couple of other smaller things, Charlotte's Web, etc. So he called me up and he was like, hey, you know, Brad is going to give you a call, which is his partner, new partner company that they formed, and Brad was like, I got this Ciroc campaign. You down to work?
Ciroc, CIROC, correct?
Yeah, Ciroc vodka. So I was like, okay, you know, what do you want me to do? And he's like, you want to direct some commercials? I was like, hell yeah. So, you know, from there, I went to town, treatments, ideas, creative concepts, you know, putting it all together, and they liked the concepts, and we, you know, have a great producer out in LA, and Jill, and we put together an all-star team, you know, from cinematographer to wardrobe and styling and casting, and you know, we crushed the summer campaign. Diddy, he posted it to his social media. They said he doesn't really do that, so if he did, then he must really like it, because they came back and I just directed 4 more for the holidays.
Wow.
So they should be dropping during the holiday season. They've already put out a couple of the photos from it on their social media page right now. So if you see the 3 photos there, those are stills from the shoot.
So your body of work alone, just for this pandemic year, what do you have to say overall as you look back?
Wow. I'm grateful for this year. I am extremely grateful for this year. There are a lot of people who've gone through a lot of things in this year. I lost my aunt a month ago, and I lost a dear friend last week. It's been an interesting year of loss and gaining, and the up and down and the roller coaster ride of life. But the one thing that it has been is an opportunity. And if anyone was looking for an opportunity to start over and start fresh with a clean slate on an even playing ground with even the multimillionaires in the world, and I'm not just talking about from a financial standpoint, but I'm just talking about from a life standpoint, this was the year that you had that chance. And if you've survived 2020 and you have somehow figured out a way to boomerang yourself and springboard off of it, I think that, you know, the future can be very, very successful for a lot of people. I researched 100 years ago when the last pandemic happened, and I used that as my blueprint for moving forward. And I'm thankful for every little last bit of it, and everybody who was there to help, and everybody who was there to encourage, everybody who was there to pick up the phone and said, hey, come and do this thing. I want to, you know, utilize and showcase your talent. In the middle of it, I designed a webpage for a friend that we just launched a month ago for a real estate company in Antigua, a lavish real estate company. We're doing social media for them. People are loving, you know, her site, and an opportunity for her to do more business, encourage her to leave her company and start her own company. So there have been a lot of different things that have happened in the year that I look at as a quote unquote body of work. And I just take it, I take it as a blessing. This year has been a blessing.
Yes, it has. Yes, it has. I am so proud of you, of your past history, of our past collaboration, of our relationship since then, and just to see what you're able to do by God's grace and your inventive mind, in a time where many people are going through a lot. Some are just laying back and don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. Some have some complain. Some feel stuck. And there are others like you who have made this year a creative year. You know, I really feel that there are people like you and others who have really done things to shine through and really are inspiring. And it was necessary, really necessary, to have you on to close this season, just to help build people up, to show them that, you know, they step out and do something creatively. Because sitting back this year and speaking to so many people through the podcast, through my Facebook page, etc., to feel there's so many people feel stuck. They're just really stuck. And I think it's important to kind of let people see what you have been able to do, you and others have been able to do. And I really, 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 really appreciate your time. Just one quick word as to your thoughts as far as the politics of this world. Nothing grand, but something that you may be looking forward to.
You know what's so funny is that I just was sitting here saying to myself, I'm so glad that we didn't talk about politics because I already knew what I would have said, which is exactly what I'm going to say. So my success in this year was also because I stayed far away from politics. I stayed far away from everything politics because it made absolutely no sense to me to be paying attention to that while the entire world was at pause. If the entire world is at pause and the millionaires are at pause and everyone is at pause and everyone is on this at home and everyone is trying to figure it out at the same time, why be distracted with people who are trying to get you distracted? You know, that's their whole purpose, is to distract you from what it is that's really going on. They have a focus. That's fix the pandemic. You know, like, so I don't need to spend all my time listening to you. And the people who were going to vote, that needed to vote, did what they needed to do, right? So I stayed far away from politics, and that allowed me to have a clear head. It allowed me to stay out of arguments. It allowed me to keep opinions and expressions to myself. It allowed me to focus on what it is that I was trying to do. And the same thing is, you know, if you have an opportunity in this year to advance yourself and you have all of this time to do so, you're not going to get that every day. I'm 48. It hasn't happened in 48 years. So I don't look forward in life and think, oh yeah, let me expect another, you know, stay-at-home pandemic order where the world shuts down. Maybe that'll happen in 2 years and then we can reset. It was a one-off. Take advantage of this one-off. God gave us a chance, you know, really see that for what it is.
Wow. Thank you so much, Sean, for giving me this time. And to my listening audience, thank you for spending your valuable time with us today. Please care to share, and remember, when you're on your beat, stay on the sunny side of the street, safely, mask up. Sean.
Ozzy.
Love you.
Thank you. I love you too. Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Ciao.
Ciao.